Hello, you beautiful bluebirds, and welcome back to another episode of DeJa Blu. We have taken 2 weeks break this time because I have decided to have DeJa Blu be sharing a podcast every other week now. So it's every other Monday, which gives me an ample amount of time to be able to recalibrate, reorganize, do my research, and have epic guests on the podcast. So I want to definitely create quality over quantity and make sure that I'm delivering the best podcast to you at home or wherever you are. And today is no exception. You are familiar. If you're familiar with DeJa Blu, then you are familiar with Azrya Bequer. She is our guest on today's podcast. We have many brilliant behind the scenes, unrecorded conversations. And today is an opportunity to just allow one of these conversations that really stood out to us to be recorded and to be shared so that we can share it with you wherever you are. Azrya is currently working on her very first book with her husband, Benjamin Bequer. And they are showing me how much effort it really takes to birth something like this into the world. And this is actually very directly linked with our topic today, which is essentially moving from the archetype of the maiden to the mother. And we'll go more into that in a moment. However, Azrya is not only just birthing a book, she's birthing a whole new life and a whole new world and going through the initiation of what it means to truly learn the art of commitment and devotion and going beyond the I and into the we and everything that must fall away for that to be born. So I think that we can touch on those topics as we move into the podcast. But Azrya, thanks for being here, Mama.
Thanks for having me.
And this is fun today because we have a slightly different setup. We don't have my usual podcast equipment. We do have a very handy Andre on site.
Very handy.
Very handy indeed. And he has set us up with lighting and mics and video so that we can continue to deliver really solid content to all of you. And we are currently sat in Azrya's bedroom.
This is true.
We are here where the magic happens.
That's a different podcast.
Yeah, we've already talked about one episode, which was a well-rested, well-fucked woman is a force to be reckoned with.
That's right.
You also starred in the Oracles of COVID-19 and the most recent one, From Grief to Grace. Mm-hmm. And now here we are, from the maiden to the mother. So Azrya, such an honor to have you. You're a brilliant individual, always spewing codes. You are just like Brianna, who is the Codemaster 3000.
Yes.
She has been anointed the Codemaster 3000.
Yeah, I don't feel like I have not been bestowed such a title.
It's coming.
It's coming?
You know when titles come through me, then they stick.
Yes, this is true.
But you can't force it.
No, you can't demand it.
No, you can't demand a title. It just happens.
Yes.
And then you also don't have a choice.
I'll just keep putting it on my vision board.
Yeah, title.
Blue gives me title. Codemaster 3,333?
That means that you're more evolved than Brianna.
Yeah, no, see, I don't want that.
We'll have to figure it out at some point. Spirit, we call you in, open our channel, and bestow us a title. Anywho, Azrya.
Yes.
First and foremost, what are we talking about when we talk about archetypes, right? I talk about the word archetypes a lot in the podcast, and the Gene Keys is based off archetypes. And we talk about that we are the embodiment of many different archetypes. What would you say in your lens what an archetype means to you?
I guess an archetype to me is universal ways of being in the world that mirror through time and history and across gender. If you look at human beings as, we're all highly unique, right? Each one of us, I believe, is a one of a kind and has its own unique soul signature and can never be replicated. And there are certain themes that connect us all, that are universal. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like pattern recognition, if you will. Mm-hmm. So the king, the queen, the joker, the maiden, the crone, the warrior, the magician. These are archetypes that you find, if you look at various cultures, various time periods, you find manifestations of those archetypes, of those energetics across the board. And everyone, I think, every human being has a spark of these archetypes within themselves. And there's many, many more, I would say, beyond, just kind of like the well-known ones. And if you work with the Archetypes deck, which is an oracle deck that we both really love and cherish, which has guided us through many, many moments of confusion and despair in this very confusing world.
Written by Kim Krans.
Written by Kim Krans. I think the way that she describes archetypes is really beautiful as well, and the whole deck is essentially many, many archetypes that she takes even beyond, things that we would associate with human. And she talks about the archetypes that can exist within places, within things, actual objects. But the core of it is that there's a universal wisdom that actually touches the whole of the human experience, no matter what your circumstances, no matter what era you're born in, no matter what, what socioeconomic status that you have. So as an actress, which I was an actress for many years, considered myself, I would say if I had a label for my identity for the vast majority of my 20s, the label was actress. And I think what drew me to acting was that it was this permission slip to shapeshift into all these various aspects of my own consciousness that I didn't normally in my day-to-day life have access to or have the ability to explore and express. And so, of course, within that, there's a lot of archetypes, right? Like in Hollywood, one of the most sort of well-known archetypes, which my agents and managers were always trying to put me into this box, was like the girl next door archetype. Because there just happened to be a lot of roles for women my age, early 20s, that were very sort of plain Jane, nice, pretty girl next door types. And I never quite fit the box. It was like, even though I looked the part, I had the long brown hair and I wore the push-up bra and, I was like, I looked the part, but energetically there was a part of me that in hindsight I can see was active, that was like, yeah, fuck all this shit. And that part of me never got me the job because it was felt energetically. There was always the archetype of the rebel is one that I resonate with very much as well. And I've always been drawn to like characters that are very anti-authoritarian and break all the rules and, go into the shadow side of the human experience unapologetically. So yeah, I think archetypes are powerful because they can help us make sense of this reality that we exist in, which is so complex and ever evolving. And I think right now, especially, there's an identity crisis that we as a human species are going through. And it's, I see it in people who used to have deep faith in institutions like religion or politics or whatever, and now are just like disillusioned and don't know what to believe in anymore. And so all of these labels that we feel safe behind, like I am a Democrat, or I am a Christian, or I am a Buddhist, or whatever the label is that we create for ourselves, we're being asked to collectively re-examine those, I think. And so going back to the basics, going back to like what are the universal themes that define human beings or that capture the essence of what it means to be human, I think is powerful. And what I see in our community is that this king-queen archetype is starting to become very activated. That language is coming back, which is kind of interesting. And the way that it's coming back, at least in our circles, is through a lens of like empowerment, right? Like, I'm growing into a queen, I'm attracting my king. Like, there's a lot of beauty and empowerment in it when you actually look at, what kings and queens were. Like, monarchy is not really like the system that we're trying to, I think, birth again in this new experience, in this new paradigm that we're here to like anchor in. But there's a version of it, right? Just like in the Gene Keys, that you have sort of 3 levels of the same frequency that express themselves.
Archetype.
Yeah, exactly. Same archetype that express themselves through, it's the same energy, but it can express itself through the shadow, through the gift, or through the siddhi. And I would say it's the same with archetypes, right? Like everything has a light and a shadow. And so the king and the queen archetype has been in the shadow. I think if you look at history, has been very about domination and about wealth inequality and suppression of the poor. And now there's kind of like to be a king, to be a queen the way that we hold those terminologies, I feel, is more through this lens of like, I'm fully awake, I'm empowered, I'm sovereign, yet I choose to be in union, or I choose to be in partnership from a place of, not from a place of need, but from a place of choice, free will. So I think it's just fascinating to kind of look at, how these things come full circle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Full circle, next level.
Full circle, next level. It's a spiral upwards.
That's right.
And so if you were to give yourself one archetype that you feel like you represent currently.
Oh, God.
I'm just planting you right in it.
Seriously. One, just one, but there's just so many.
There's so many. And that's what it talks about in the Gene Keys, is just sort of breathing into the way that the Gene Keys utilizes archetypes to be able to break down the human experience, the blueprint of what it means to be human. There's, in your hologenetic profile, you'll have 11 archetypes that are predominantly set for you, of what runs through you, recognizing also you are simultaneously all 64 archetypes. Right.
And so they're available in you, they just may be more dormant than others.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there is, the analogy that I like to use is that we are a diamond, and it's just one diamond, but there are so many different faces that you can look at that diamond from. It depends what angle you're looking at it from, and the position that it's in, it just deciphers in how you experience the diamond. And ultimately it's the same diamond. And so where we get stuck in our lives is that we get identified with one archetype. Mm-hmm. I am the mother, I am the care bringer, the life bringer, and this is my role, and this is what I do. But when the seductress wants to come online, or when the teacher wants to come online, or when the student wants to come online, or whatever it is that the other face of the diamond, we become so rigid that this is our archetype that we resist what wants to flow through us, and this is where we get a little bit stuck and stagnant within our lives. And so essentially breathing permission into feeling all of the archetypes as they arise. And we were having a conversation just prior to jumping on the podcast, which was, you were saying, when I was in my emotional experience recently, I would say one thing and then 10 minutes later it would change. Mm-hmm. And there's like this is essentially a lot of the feminine essence, which is represented and known as the ocean. Mm-hmm. You can't wake up in the morning and predict what the ocean is going to be like. The ocean will tell you how the ocean is. Mm-hmm. And it's all based off of what it is in the moment. And so acknowledging that as the archetypes want to flow through us, there is an unpredictable nature to the archetypes, just like there is with the ocean. And however, the archetypes allow me to understand and hold a container for what is, so that I can observe it from the light and the shadow aspect while breathing into whatever is the most sacred thing. And so, okay, maybe I'll change my question.
I mean, I can answer it.
Do you feel like you have a clear answer on the one archetype, or do you want to just give us like a little general breakdown of the archetypes that you've been experiencing as of late?
So I definitely, one of the first things that came to mind was visionary, mm-hmm. Which to me just means being able to see beyond what is obvious in the now, and pull through information that seems to exist almost like on a vibrational frequency that exists in the quantum field, but in the future, mm-hmm. and being able to then translate that information into this now moment and really be in dialogue with potentialities and shaping reality through that dialogue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And with every archetype, there is always a shadow.
Absolutely.
So if you were to say there's the archetype of the visionary that is present for you, what would you say is tangibly the shadow of the archetype of the visionary?
The shadow is very clearly the falling so in love with the potentials. I call it the potentials palace. So when I think of the quantum field of infinite possibility, which is really the only thing that is real, actually, we are part of this infinite grid of possibilities. And when we come into conscious communication with that, there's, for me, I find myself historically being so mesmerized by the possibilities and the potentials that I get lost in the potentials palace, where it disconnects me from my actual reality and it pulls me out of the present moment. Kind of the way that when like you're in the middle of a conversation with someone and then they get a text message and then suddenly their consciousness is just gone. It's just like sucked into this other thing, into this portal, and they're no longer with you. They're no longer in the space. I guess it kind of feels like that. And I have become, the words that resonate are like mesmerized or enamored with like the possibility or the potential versus fully being present with what is now. And then even when I receive the things that I was manifesting, that I saw in the potentials palace, I saw the glimpse of, and then I did find a way to pull it through into this third dimensional reality. And it's actually now right in front of me. I sometimes find myself still looking at it through the lens of like, yes, and what is the unrealized potential even in this? Like, how can this be polished and buffered and adjusted to sort of fit this ideal, perfect vision that, I do believe that this third dimensional reality, what we're talking about, to just kind of use a little bit of quantum language here, is everything in our reality, in the hologram of existence, is basically just light and sound frequencies, right? That are interfacing with each other, that are vibrating at different on the bandwidth, on the spectrum of all the various frequencies. They're all interfacing with each other. So the color red has a different frequency than the color blue, for example. And so in the orchestra of all of that, there's attunement that can occur, right, to allow for things to basically collapse out of wave into particle, and that is manifestation. So a thought form exists in the quantum field as frequency, as a vibration, but it hasn't yet collapsed into form. So I could talk about this incredible property that I want to manifest that has all these amazing trees on it, and where I'm going to host these incredible events and I'm going to gather people and I'm going to, and that can exist in my, as Esther Hicks would call it, my vibrational escrow. Mm-hmm. It can exist there as an energy form, as a thought pattern. And while it exists there, it's really pristine. The moment it collapses into form, so from wave into particle, meaning the manifestation actually occurs, there are going to be, almost inevitably, things that don't feel perfect about it, right? Like the mother tree is a perfect example. It is and was a beautiful, beautiful place, and it doesn't have air conditioning, and sometimes there's rats that come, and there's a rat issue, and like there's just things that are realities about this dimension that you have to kind of deal with, that maybe aren't your full fuck yes or your highest excitement, or like even this place, right? This place is a dream come true, and it has water damage, and it needs an extensive remodel. And so like in the material realm, when things become manifest, they also come with many, many other factors that you could describe as imperfect. And so the shadow side of the visionary, to come full circle, would then say, I'd rather escape into my next vision of perfection and play in the quantum field again, versus actually deal with the matter, with the reality that has been presented to me, because I don't want to get my hands dirty. And in this dimension, in this 3D reality, in the physical form, everything is a little messy. Even the most pristine, most beautiful woman still is gonna get gassy sometimes, and you know what I mean, need to take a giant shit. Like, it's just the nature of being in form. You know what I mean? Like, it's slimy, and you get dirt under your fingernails, and like, it's just interesting for me to like really plug into this reality, looking at the ways in which I have shied away from those things because I want it to be this pristine, beautiful, perfect thing that it is before it becomes manifest here. Does that make sense? So that's one archetype. The other archetype, which they're all linked, but the channel, I resonate with that because I feel like I do my best work when I get out of my own way. So everything that I create that I'm really proud of, whether it's writing or it's filmmaking or speaking, is when I'm not thinking about it, I'm not trying, I'm not actually doing anything, I'm just sort of allowing something that feels like it's much more intelligent than me, which I would describe as, you know, the intelligence of the universe working through me, or the ancient intelligence, my own higher self, my connection into that source. When I let that take the steering wheel, then I find that magic happens. So the hollow bone or the channel is another archetype that I resonate with deeply, and I find that the more I relax into that, the better the things are that I create. And then there was a third one, and I can't remember what it was now, but, the translator. Yeah, so what's interesting is even before I had my awakening, I was actually officially a translator. I worked for E-News, E-Entertainment, and I did translation work from, I would translate stories for E-News, which is, if you've ever watched E-Entertainment, it's, you know, celebrity gossip. And I would translate those stories from from English into German, and then I would do the German voiceover because I speak German fluently. I did that for 6.5 years. That was like my bread and butter job, my financial security blanket. And so I was already doing this translation work in a very, I would say, again, the shadow side expression of it, right? It was very low vibration because the content itself just had very little meaning. And when I had my first ayahuasca ceremony, I was shown that I'm still here to be a translator, except for I'm here to translate like blueprints for the new paradigm into this dimension for how to be human and share it through media as medicine, and that I could no longer give my voice, my actual voice, to this job because it was in direct contradiction to my soul's mission. And so yeah, it's like how to translate things, feelings, concepts, ways of being, things that can seem very intangible. The field or the subject of consciousness is very broad and vast, and if you're tracking how consciousness evolves and you're trying to find patterns and you're trying to understand how to explain it to people so that they can make sense of their experience, of their awakening, of the progression of their awakening, I feel like I have a gift to be able to translate these things into language. For me, the main form of communication is through language, whereas for someone else, it might be through dance, or it might be through painting, or it might be through math, right?
And so we were talking earlier about the archetype of the mother and how you feel like there's more and more every single day that you're moving from the maiden to the mother. I'd love to hear from you about what is the archetype of the maiden, and what is that journey to the archetype of the mother? We shared about it over lunchtime, but I'd love to hear again on DeJa, Blu. Do you feel what you believe is that transition and how it's showing up for you in your everyday reality?
Yeah, so it's maiden, mother, crone, right? Are sort of the three chapters of the feminine evolution, I guess you could say, the evolution of a feminine energy.
And if anybody has the Sacred Oracle Tarot deck, this is the Sacred Rebels.
No, Archetypes deck.
It's a Sacred Rebels deck. But it's the Sacred Rebels. The front cover of it by Alana Fairchild has the image, the maiden mother and the crone drawing on the front of it. Yeah,
it's beautiful.
They can use it as a reference point to see the archetypal journey that a woman will embark on.
Yeah. So it's like, I guess the maiden energy to me is, I think, again, it's like becoming mesmerized or enchanted by the potential which is not actually a bad thing. I think it can be beautiful to see potential everywhere you look, but also recognizing that we can get trapped in sort of like a little bit of a fairy tale version of what we think reality should be, and then if we're consistently in that maiden energy, then we're always still looking for something that is going to fulfill that dream that was implanted, right? For example, one archetypal component of that would be like my prince, my prince in shining armor who's going to come and rescue me. One day I will be whisked away and whisked off my feet and taken into the palace, and then, right off into the sunset together. And these are archetypal reference points that we receive through programming, right? We grow up watching rom-coms and sitcoms and Hollywood movies and Disney. Oh my gosh, Disney, yeah. And it programs us to crave these things. And so when I said, to me, it's kind of like waking up out of the fairy tale and coming into the reality. When I shared that was my experience of maiden to mother, you were like, yeah, but I don't resonate with that because I want my life to be a fairy tale. And the way I'm using the word fairy tale is more of that paradigm of like, there's a level of illusion that is wrapped up in it. Mm-hmm. The blind spot, I would say, is to think that the fairy tale is actually more alluring than the reality. And I would say for most people, their version of reality feels like it pales in comparison to the fairy tale. But when you're fully awake, fully conscious, and fully present with reality, and you're shaping it and molding it with your will and your intention, and you're doing your inner work, your reality actually becomes the most magical thing. Mm-hmm. Because just the fact that I'm looking at you and your heart is beating and your nervous system is processing this information and your pupils are dilating slightly and you're a living, breathing organism, you're a miracle. The fact that you exist, if you look at evolution, the fact that you exist and you have the capacities, the cognitive capacities that you have, you are a fractal of the divine, right? So the reality is actually far more interesting than the fairy tale. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And touching on that piece about the word reality, I think that I have a bit of a trigger around it. And where that trigger really stems from is, I remember growing up and people saying to me when I was a child, you don't live in reality. You don't live in reality, Charlotte. You don't live in reality, Blue. Like, you're off in with the fairies and you've got your head in the clouds. Yeah. And I think that represented to me is like, well, first and foremost, whose reality are you talking about? Because you put 6 people in one room. Everybody's looking at that room from a completely different lens. Totally. Lens is a byproduct of all of their life experiences up until this point and how we've responded to them. So if our lens is distorted because we've started creating a story at the age of 6 years old that has perpetuated a loop that is now living still alive with us in our 40s and is now creating distortion within our reality and therefore fractured relationships, for example, that's one person's reality. Where the other person is sitting in the exact same room could be having a beautiful experience because their lenses are slightly different. And so when somebody says to me, come back to reality, my reference point is like, well, whose reality are you talking about here? Because there's just under 8 billion people on the planet. There's just under 8 billion different realities happening simultaneously. And so when you said the fairy tale component, we wake up out of a fairy tale and we come into reality, it triggers that memory as a child of, believing in magic and believing in fairy tales and believing in fairies and the unknown and the mystical things. And actually, I think that's become one of my superpowers as an adult, is that I haven't stopped believing in it, actually. And so, believing is seeing, and actually seeing miraculous things happen in essentially my fairy tale. So really what we weaned it down to in the conversation, like, we realized that there's a difference of feeding into an illusion and then bypassing actually what is. Yes. And allowing the breath of magic even in the shadow. Mm-hmm. Being like, wow, like I'm really in it and I see the divinity of all of this. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where the crossover is, and I think that's why words are so powerful. And specifically when there's a misconnect or a disconnect within words, where we can go off on two different tracks. Now we're in two different realities all of a sudden.
I mean, technically, you could argue that that's actually happening all the time, right? That every single word that I have a definition of in my mind, you have a slightly different definition of. We were talking about this even with the hearing, right? Like the frequencies that you tap into create a completely different version of reality than the frequencies that I tap into. And yet somehow we're on the same page and we can meet and we can connect and we get each other, right? It's kind of a miracle, right? That there's like this intersection point, considering that we've lived completely different lives all the way up until we met, and our programming is different, and yet here we are, right? So I think, and we talk about this a lot, that like really, truly, deeply intimate soul connections with people where you can just be with them forever and ever and ever and never feel drained and never feel like you need a break are very rare. Very rare, because most of the time when you're spending time with other people, there's incompatibilities within the frequency that you have to constantly be in calibration to, and so that's exhausting after a while. It takes maintenance, and it's an investment of energy. Whereas others, actually, there's no friction there, so the vibration is just, it's in harmony, and so it's nourishing and replenishing. So yeah, I think Maiden to Mother, is, I'm moving from a phase, I'm kind of like, it feels like I'm landing the ship into a timeline, into a reality that I have spent many, many, many years crafting in my mind's eye, in my visionary state. And now it's actually here, and there's been like this lag effect where I haven't fully caught up yet to the fact that it's real. And it's been kind of amazing, actually, because my conscious mind is like, of course, like it's all here, like what's the problem, right? But energetically and subconsciously, there's still parts of me that are like, but can I trust it? Like, you know what I mean? Because everything else has been fleeting and has come and gone, and I've been incredibly nomadic my whole life. I grew up with really no roots. I've never planted roots into the earth anywhere. The longest I've ever lived in one place is, I think, 5 years max. And so stability, consistency, longevity, these are all very foreign things. And now I, am building a life with a man who really embodies and represents all of those things. And that's his superpower, is that he has mastered those things. He's mastered this dimension in many ways. And he's also felt the shadow of this dimension in many ways, which I haven't, right? And so I've been like, I've avoided it because there's something about plugging into this reality that is very scary to my spirit, because there is a trauma matrix here that is very real. And so to really be like, okay, is it safe to land? Is it safe to fully come into embodiment? Is it safe to fully believe that the quest, the search, the constant visioneering is actually, over? Not completely, of course, because I'm always going to keep visioneering new things, but for now, like, I've arrived. There's edges there for me that I've been working through. And those edges are directly in the way of everything that I know is my next level of expansion, which is to be a published author, which is to complete a documentary project that's been in the making for years, which is to actually build a system for transformation that is scalable, that can be shared with the masses, right? These are all seeds that were planted years ago and have taken so much time to cultivate, and I can feel like the harvest is coming. But now it's actually time to just do the work. It's not time to think about it or dream about it or put it on the vision board. It's like it's time to sit down and do the work.
So I'd be interested to hear about the Maiden archetype. If you'd be down to read it from the book, to give us some context of this piece that is transitioning now into the mother from Kim Krans' lens.
Yeah. Well, you pulled this card as well. We both pulled this card fairly recently, so it's been present for both of us. The Maiden, the virgin, the princess, the innocent. The Maiden archetype is the epitome of innocent arousal, naive sensuality, and precarious purity. She is compelling and addictive because of her flawless and youthful glow. She's the first archetype in the trifecta of Maiden, Mother, Crone, and rightfully so, because she has, so much to learn. The Maiden is perfectly positioned for trouble to come her way and subject her to challenge that leads to the next phase of womanhood. She must grow up, yet hesitates at the threshold, enamored by the charms of youth. The Maiden represents the side of us that is riveted and curious, drawn to shadowy forests, dark nights, and taking just one taste of poisonous fruit. Her magic is edgy and includes both shame and delight. Let yourself fall down the rabbit hole, young one. And then it says, do you long to be rescued by another or receive a kiss that brings you back to life? Be wary of waiting for a prince. Break the spell of your own life. Yes, moving from Maiden to Mother is challenging, often leaving unresolved tensions between the two archetypes for years, if not a lifetime. That hesitation at the threshold, that's what I'm talking about. When I say I can feel the part of me that's still fully landing into it, it's like there's a part of my spirit that's going, But what if I actually did just fully sink into this container and trust it fully?
And I think that you even, touching on, without straying too far away from the point, touching on our perception of what a container is and how this is very present in our conversations right now across the board, with, us being in relationships and always finding the taboo and the edgy and wanting to expand beyond what has been done for eons and carve our new way, and not to just do it because our mother did it and our mother's mother did it and it goes on 7 generations and beyond, but to actually question the system that is in place. Is it in alignment, and is it set up with the seed of potential to bear fruit from a place of unconditional love? And the word container, and how I can feel the Maiden archetypal energy that comes up within me, within others, within you, that goes, container, is that constricting? Does that say that my freedom is no longer here? Well, a container is something to contain something, but I am a free spirit. And a container may have a lid on it. That means I can't really grow, or I am a plant with a glass ceiling, and can't only grow so much. And simultaneously, we recognize on the other side of that narrative, well, if you have water but you have no container, then you've just got a spillage all over the countertop. So you need a glass to hold the energy to then allow it to actually fill up. And so it's a dance now as the Maiden starts to mature into the Mother, recognizing that there is a sense of following through with a commitment over a long period of time and not digging up in doubt what was once planted in faith, in the motion of the next high excitement, which feels more like the archetype of the Maiden.
Yes.
And so essentially the Maiden will be in the zest of the moment, where the Mother is actually in a patience. I mean, to be a mother physically, you're baking a child in the oven for 9 months. There is a lot of patience and an initiation that is happening on a physical, spiritual, mentally, financially, sexually, on all planes of existence level, to initiate yourself into the next phase of devotion, because that's truly what a mother is the art of devotion, devoting yourself to another life beyond your own eye. Yeah. So I'd be interested to read the Mother archetype now that we've read the Maiden. The Great Mother, the feminine, the source. We begin our archetypal story with the Mother's love. Through her sensual, fertile, and life-giving energy, all creation takes form. Regardless of our birth story, each of our hearts beat for the first time in the warm womb of the Mother, where she offered resources from her body for the building of our own. Yet her tale is not so simple, as the Mother, especially on the earthly plane, contains both light and the dark aspects of the feminine. With the best of intentions, the Mother wraps her loving arms around her creations and begins to grip what she meant to set free. The Mother both nurtures and prohibits growth. She gives, yet clings. She creates, yet restricts. Amid this complex energy, the Mother holds the key to the eternal challenge of love. When light, glowing, generative, creative and nurturing. When dark, dim, exhausted, controlling, and limited. The mother is part of the trifecta Maiden, Mother, Crone. Because of the relationship between them, take special note within these cards appear in one reading. Notice how the mother archetype is expressed in nature. This is perhaps the most balanced and benevolent form of the mother's grace.
Yeah, and I think, it's not just a mother and a physical human child, right? It's like the mother being the mother of a project, being the mother of a vision, of a cause, of whatever, right? For me, I'm birthing, and I'm birthing in a big way. I'm birthing this book, which is a collection of a lifetime of codes that I've downloaded, from all the various ceremonies I've done, and then merging that with Benjamin's codes that he's collected over the course of his lifetime, going deep into business and finances and understanding how to actually create in this dimension. And so we are mother and father to these creations that are coming through us, and we're learning really how to parent them as they come through. And that piece around your intention is to get out of the way and just let it flow through and let it be free, right? To be what it wants to be. But then the clinging and the controlling and the trying to manipulate it for it to be perfect, for it to be this idealized version of what you thought it should be. These are all the trials and tribulations of creation, whether it's writing a book or it's raising a child, right? It's actually, the energies are similar. And you see that, right? I mean, we both have our experience of growing up and really, I think all children have this assumption that their parents should just be like these perfect parents and they should have it all figured out. But really, our parents are subconsciously projecting things onto us that they think are in our best interest, and from a place of love, albeit distorted love, they might think that it's really important to force us to play violin every day for 2 hours, even though it's the last thing you want to do, right? That's one of my things that I had to move through with my mom, because she really wanted to be a professional musician, and so she saw this opportunity to set up her daughter with the ultimate path to success when it came to classical music. And her daughter wanted nothing to do with classical music. Her daughter wanted to dance around on stages and play characters and, channel the shadow side of the human emotion. So she had to painfully let go of her attachments to what I should be and let me ultimately be who I am. But that tension took years to resolve. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you have anecdotes that you can share of your experience of, things that were projected onto you of how you should be. Mm-hmm. Be realistic, Charlotte. Come out of the clouds, and and I can see why there's that aversion to even what I said, right, around like letting go of the fairy tale. But I'm not implying that we should lose the magic. In fact, I think that it's keeping the channel open into the non-physical dimensions, into the clouds, into the magical fairy realms, but then also learning to plant our root down into the earth and really become integrated and balanced to be able to hold a larger spectrum in all directions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I really resonate with this card for obvious reasons. If you've listened to DeJa Blu podcast from the beginning, you may understand why. Because it does speak about, the birthing life and also gripping onto it. And I can, I only want to talk about my own personal experience in the sense of like how I experienced the mother archetype within my life of birthing the mother tree, or like birthing the mother tree with you. And then as you stepped into a new birthing process, I went into really being the mother as opposed to the maiden, which was essentially you were the mother and I was the maiden archetype within the mother tree when it was the mothership. And then I stepped into the mother, and then, you went up into the next phase. And now I have essentially, this is even in my Instagram bio, mama of the mother tree, became the mother of that space. And more I'm starting to recognize that, there's a finite time when you let the child go. When you let that entity that you birthed, or that business or that experience or whatever it is, that creation, that relationship, there comes a time when it's let it be on its own now, let it do its own thing, and starting to experience the mother tree in a position where it gets to be its own thing, and I get to take my hands off the reins with this one. And it's been interesting because, it says the mother wraps her loving arms around the creation and begins to grip what she meant to set free. And it's ringing, so many truth bells in my head, because I'm holding on to what it was or what it could have been. And ultimately, it is what it is, and it wants to be what it is, and it wants to breathe what it is without resentment being projected onto it, because it is what it is. And simultaneously, I'm seeing how I'm showing up with that grip because I birthed it, essentially. I'm seeing how that dynamic is playing out with my mother and myself, of she loves me with every single fiber in her being. She adores me. There was never a moment in my life where I questioned my lover's mother. I never questioned my lover's mother. Actually, I haven't. That's a good point. I haven't questioned it. I never questioned my mother's love for me growing up. And yet, when I did start to create this individual nature, the grip got really tight. I've got the hiccups now. I think it's something in me talking around this topic. Oh, that just came out of nowhere. I've just got the hiccups all of a sudden.
Interesting.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Live here on DeJa Vu. Talking about my mother, and all of a sudden it's got taken down. My wave of hiccups.
The subconscious speaks.
Speaking my truth. The grip is actually what can create more suffering. And so there is an acknowledgement of when there is the time for the mother to let go. And I think it's far easier said than done. And yet, if I want to truly come into a place of empathy and compassion for that piece, I get to acknowledge where it lies in my life too. Because I don't have a child. Right. And I haven't had a child in my belly for 9 months and had to birth it and go through the initiation of what that even looks like. And then from that place, raise that child for 18 years. Yeah. And pour every single penny that I make into making sure that that child's life is the best child's life I could ever give.
And then slowly have the dawning realization that that child is a complete alien from another dimension and is going to do things that are going to trigger my deepest fears and insecurities and worries.
I'm so sorry. No. Oh man, they shaved my head, changed my name, do plant medicines in the Amazon jungle, get a tattoo.
Yep, pushed it over the edge with that one.
Yeah.
And there's the profound soul contract, right? I think the relationship that we have with our actual blood parents, there's some of the most profound curriculum that is available in those dynamics. Precisely because these attachments, these deep bonds of attachments are so strong and present. It's the ultimate initiation.
And I remember when I was a child, we went to this place, and it was some exotic country. And they had a very bizarre, actually, looking back on it. I don't know whose idea it was to have this, but there was like a tank or a cage of baby chicks in the entrance of a hotel. And you can go and sit with them, and you can hold them. Okay. And I remember that I would pick up one of these chicks, and I was a child. I was very young, and I didn't fully understand how tight you were supposed to squeeze them.
I don't know if I like where the story is going.
No, animals were permanently damaged, maybe just momentarily. And I would pick up the chicks in my excitement and my love for the chick and just fly and squeeze it, and I would squeeze the chick and it would pass out.
Oh God.
Then about 2 minutes later, it would come to again.
This was a repeated occurrence?
Sorry.
Who was supervising you?
I'll try one more time. And I picked up another one. Passed out.
Oh, wow.
It's not my proudest moment.
You got carried away, didn't you?
So into it. I was so into this little chick. I was like, yeah, you should be called Squishy and you shall be mine.
Yes.
And ultimately, it's causing more damage to hold on so tight.
Yeah.
Because I love you so much.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, when I look at it from a meta perspective, how my mother and myself are such medicine for each other, because there's an invitation to let go of control, and there's also simultaneously for me an invitation for me to own my truth while simultaneously honoring my mother's truth. And the maiden kind of just goes, fuck you, where the mother starts to understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is ultimately my journey on this process. It started off with, well, fuck you. This is who I am. Stop trying to project your control onto me. Ultimately, what it actually is I love you so much and I don't know any other way. Please teach me.
And that actually is more powerful.
Yes. No, I'm learning.
Yeah.
And my tone has drastically shifted since season 1, when this is all really happening and I was in the thick of it.
Yeah.
And so as I go to the archetype of the mother, we're now rolling into a deeper level of empathy and understanding for mothers across the board, and mothers that are birthing project or birthing things into the world. As we mature and grow up, and the tension starts to dissolve between the maiden and the mother.
So if your mother called you right now, what would you say to her?
I love you. I do. I've never stopped loving her. I love her with every single cell of my body, and honestly, the time that we spent apart. Oh, there's a big hiccup. Wow, my body's really talking to me. I should probably reach out. Is I've been able to get away from the controlling, which has created the gripping, which has created the resistance, which has created me to fight back. And I've actually been able to see her from more of a withdrawn perspective, which is a deep appreciation of what she's given to me in my life. And the privilege that I've had being raised by my father and my mother in my life. And deep appreciation and acknowledgement that she's doing the best that she can with the awareness that she has. So there's less of a fight in me now. And it's more of like, I'm here to listen. I cannot suppress a part of myself to appease you. I cannot. But I can listen, and I can stop fighting and kicking.
Yeah, and it's the more the control, the more the clinging creates the suffocation, the more energy is required to push away from that and break free, right? So that defiant energy, that rebellious energy is in direct response to the amount of suffocation that is experienced, or censorship or restriction. And once you've broken free and the pendulum swung far in the other direction, now there's like this, it's coming back into a state of, there's a harmonious sort of middle ground that you're starting to anchor into, where you're not compromising your truth and you're not bending in order to appease, but you also aren't in the antagonistic energy of needing to exert resistance towards the thing that you experienced as being suppressing.
Yeah, and I take full ownership of that energy within me, that stubbornness, fighting.
And it serves a purpose sometimes,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's necessary for survival.
To maintain the innocence of truly why I came here and who I came here to be.
Yeah.
Entirely. So powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is essentially the narrative of the archetypes.
Yeah.
And understanding the archetypes so that we can understand ourselves in a deeper way, recognizing that it's not something outside of ourselves. Again, it's the fractals of the diamond, so that we can birth it through. Because, I think there's so much power in the archetypes of being the seductress and feeling that, and allowing any of the shame around sexuality to be transmuted through this archetype, while I understand simultaneously the shadow of the seductress is using that to get power over others. So, as we know the shadow, as we know the light, we can really understand it and navigate the energy in a healthy outlet.
Yeah.
Every archetype has a shadow. Every archetype has the gift. And when we know the shadow, then we reclaim our power back from it, and we can use more of that energy for the gift we want through it.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you feel called to share about the archetypes and your journey with relating to the archetypes and how it shows up in your experience?
I feel called to ask questions.
Amazing. I've got the hiccups still. You've got to bear with me, fam. We're in this together.
We're in this together. The diaphragm is spazzing out a little bit. It's all good. It's just,
Do you know what the metaphorical response is to hiccups?
No, I'm sure there's the heal your body, heal your life would give you some very profound download about that.
Yeah.
Louise Hay, right? Or something?
Louise Hay?
Yeah, she would know.
She has it in a book. It'll say hiccups and it'll say something about hiccups.
Yeah.
Maybe not speaking.
Maybe Andre can Google it for us right now.
Yeah, we've got Andre on the computer just looking like a snag over there in the corner.
Speaking of, my question is related to your intimate relationship and the fact that you are going to be, may I say your age? I imagine I am.
My age?
Yeah, you're about to be 30.
I'm a transparent book. Let's go.
I know, baby. You're about to hit the big 3-0.
Oh,
and so
damn.
that is also coming out of the Saturn return, coming into a new chapter, a new decade.
I'm coming out of Saturn return.
I think you are, baby. I think it's time.
It's so funny when you say I'm coming out of Saturn return. I'm a very visual person. I'm an artist, right? So like, I get visuals in my head. I get pictures. And the visual that I got for all of you that are potentially watching the video content of this, I'm like I've gone through the birth canal, Saturn return, and I'm literally like out of it, and I'm like this. And I'm covered in slime, and I'm taking my first really deep breath, and I'm like, I'm making it to the other side of the Saturn return, and I'm just cruising. Wow, that was a hiccup right through the middle of the word. Cruising into my 30th rotation around the sun, like an arrow, pulled back, and then projected forward with all of that power.
I see it.
Yeah.
So anything that you want to share about your journey of the next decade that you are beginning, the way in which you are stepping into that, the queen that you are becoming, and the journey for you from maiden to mother, also in your relationship as well as your creative expression, your career.
Well, first and foremost, the thing that I'm really noticing is on a physical level with my body. I'm noticing that my ovaries, uterus, and all lady reproductive organs are going, now is the time! Let's have a baby!
Wow.
And I'm like...
Biological clock's fully kicking in already.
The biological clock is like... Let's have a baby.
Wow.
Yeah. They're singing and dancing.
Yes. Andre's quietly exiting the space, just pretending like he didn't hear any of that.
Shriveling down to a peace sign, like 23, give me a break. Yeah, so that is definitely present, where I'm around children now, and I'm like, and I just melt. And I
just had a flashback to you with the chicks again.
Oh God! Please, I hope I don't pick up my small children and suffocate them because of my life.
Oh God! He was supposed to be the professional one.
He's got his alarm going off because he's helping us to reset the camera. Thank you, Andre. Yeah, I just noticed that I'm starting to get quite broody. My body is. And simultaneously, I don't feel actually like I'm ready. If I was to make a decision, if it was up to me, I don't feel ready fully to birth a life into this world yet. I still feel like I'd like to create a few things before. Yeah. And that happens.
The container.
Yeah, ultimately, I really want to set that child up to have the best life possible that I can really possibly give. And I think that I can still probably be a little bit selfish right now. Maybe that will shift with it, if I was to have a child within my body, that would shift. However, as it stands right now, I'd like to be able to set up, first and foremost, that the 9-month gestation period of the baby in the mother's womb is the most luxurious, fun, elated ecstasy, ecstatic time of my life, that I am cooking this child in the oven in the sense of marinating in pure bliss. Because my study with the gene keys is that your genetic coding starts when you are in the 9-month gestation period where you're in your mother's womb. And so the fabric of who you be as an adult is laid down of how your mother's emotional experience is when you were baking there. So for me, it's about continuing to set up commitment, things that I am creating now for a future timeline.
So commitment to you is something that exists beyond the present moment.
Yeah, I mean, if I want to buy a house, which would feel really good to me in this lifetime, I'd really love to buy a house, and I'd really love to walk into a house and go, this one, and have the resources to be able to do that. Well, that is a long-term thing. Like, that requires me to go, oh, okay, I just made $30,000. Amazing. I'm going to put that into a savings account because I'm thinking of the trajectory of, at one point, I'd like to buy a house. Where the maiden in me goes, oh, $30,000. You know what I can do with that? All right, we're going to Bali. And then we're going to go here. We're going to do this. And all of a sudden, $30,000 falls through sand. It's that sand, like holding with your fingers open. It just melts through the cracks. So it's like, what is my trajectory in my timeline? And I think 30, ultimately, I don't want to associate myself with a number. However, I do think 30 is a beautiful archetypal time to move from the maiden into the mother and to actually to be thinking of a future timeline for the greater good of myself and what I want to birth into the planet and what I want to birth through my relationship and what I want to birth within my family, soul family and blood, to be thinking more from that lens. So it's a scan. Where am I, first and foremost, not trusting myself? Where am I falling into the trap of liking the moment of the instant gratification as opposed to the long vision? Where in my life can I actually get really clear with myself of what do I actually want? And how can I start implementing these into the very small moments? Because that was what creates the big ones.
Yeah, that theme has been very present for me too in this transition from maiden to mother, which is like looking at all the little ways in which I want to, again, escape reality in service to something that feels more pleasurable in the moment. And Benjamin and I have the saying, we use our full fuck yes to discern what I want most over what I want now. And one of the most prevalent ways that it's shown up for me is in my relationship to my physical body as well, in my relationship to actually becoming strong and fit in my body, which is something I've always wanted my whole life. And I never was willing to move through the resistance to actually become consistent enough to actually build muscle and see the results that I knew were possible. And there's actually almost nothing that's like more honest than your physical body, because it will reflect back to you exactly your internal state, right? So when I look in the mirror,
that's a tough.
I know it's a tough pill to swallow, but when I look in the mirror and I've been consistent for 2 weeks straight, and I've shown up for myself, and I've done the lunges, and I've done the sit-ups, and I've done the pull-ups, and I haven't skipped out on the final round because I just didn't feel like it. I see the difference reflected back to me immediately. And when I take 2 weeks off and I'm like, it's okay, I don't need to, I also see the difference reflected back to me. And no matter how many times I show up for myself in it, I still have to fight the voice in my head that goes, you don't have to do this. You could be doing something more fun. You can stop now. It's like this constant, just like a tape recorder in my head that's just like, okay, that's enough now. That's enough now. Okay, you push yourself too hard. That's enough now. It's kind of amazing. And I've almost gotten to a point now where I'm just like I have to chuckle at myself because it's hilarious, right? But that to me is a manifestation of commitment, and it starts with my own relationship to my body, and then it ripples from there into all the other things, right, that I'm doing. Like this long-term project, this documentary, there are so many layers of this process that technically aren't my full fuck yes. It's not really my full fuck yes to sit inside and stare at a laptop screen for hours and hours and hours and sift through dozens of hours of footage in order to find that 30-second clip that's going to perfectly tell, this part of the story. It's very detail-oriented. It's tedious work. And yet, what I want most over what I want now is I want to be able to share the magic and the profoundness of my journey and my life with the world, because that is my mission, my purpose. Mm-hmm. So it's in service to that. It's in devotion to that, right? And it's interesting to see and witness within myself how quickly there's this part of me that just wants to quit and go and start all over again, you know? And the ice bath is another powerful place where I get to watch that part of me. It's like, oh, you don't have to do the full 5 minutes. You can just do 3 minutes. And just this dialogue that just continues. It's like, how many times do I have to...
The negotiation with oneself.
The negotiations are incredible. So,
and Andre says this. He's like, well, I don't negotiate with myself. Yeah. It's like, I just don't. It's a non-negotiable.
Yeah, he chooses not to. Yeah.
Easier said than done.
Easier said than done.
I don't know. Maybe it was just like... planted here from another dimension in a tiny little seed pod that then sprouted and turned into a physical form. His name is Andre Duquan, but actually he's just a man here to share the art of non-negotiables.
Annoy the shit out of us.
I'm like, how are you real? Give me something. He cried the other day.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
I got a tear out of him.
Wow. 2,
actually, to be honest. 2 tears. I kept them in a tiny little jar and I planted them in the garden. I'm just kidding. But really, I was like so excited, and he said to me, he was like, were you excited that I was crying?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, actually, I was really happy. He was like, wow. I was like, because you're showing signs of like relatability.
I mean, there's such a beautiful thing to watch a man cry.
It's so, well, not if he's like seriously injured himself.
Well, okay, fair enough. I mean, for emotional
context.
I mean, emotional pain, catalyzing, or just surrender, right? Just surrender cries.
He was crying because he loves me.
Oh gosh, that's freaking adorable.
He's over there laughing. Yeah, 2 tears because he loves me.
Wow.
So that part of me, that unworthiness loop that just keeps it inside of me, took a break for a second and was like,
evidence!
I must keep these tears and put them in a jar and give them to the gypsies. Make it stop.
You are the gypsy, darling. You are the gypsy.
Yeah, that's why I have kept the jar.
Oh, beautiful. So you have a boyfriend that cries because he loves you so much. So things seem to be going well in that department.
Oh, yeah, actually, really well. I do feel,
Lift it up and then back down.
I've got the headphones on and I'm really in a bit of a way here.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And yet I do feel definitely, you know, we say when there's contraction in the space, you can feel everybody's arsehole get really tense.
We say, you say.
I'm just roping you into this experience so that I'm not alone. So, you know, I definitely do feel that, like, feeling when I'm like, baby! Mm-hmm. And he's like, later! And so that's a beautiful dance, that I'm dating a 23-year-old.
Yeah.
He is very mature, very wise, and beyond his years for most people that I know that are in their 60s.
Yes.
Profound individual.
Yes.
And simultaneously, there's an age gap here. Yeah.
You know, that reminds me of my first experience of Andre was actually listening to the DeJa Blu podcast episode you did with him when I was working out at the gym. Full circle. And I didn't know him yet, but I knew that there was like a thing happening. And I was like, let me listen to this episode and see what this gets.
I introduced you with a friend on that episode.
You what?
I introduced you with a friend.
He was still a friend, no?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he was kind of like in the friend zone still. But I knew there was something brewing, and I was very impressed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yes.
I got the green light from you.
Yes.
And now here we are.
Here we are.
He lives with you.
Yes.
What a big green light.
Ultimate.
Oh. Yeah. So we'll see. You know, ultimately it all comes down to time. I'm not pressing for any timeline right now, but more so I'm just really responding to, you asked about being 30 and like coming into that and what is really happening in my human experience around that. It's a celebration. It's a celebration of life. And to be honest, I'm really looking forward to being a woman. Mm. I've been a little boy my whole life.
Little Mowgli. I see the Mowgli in you.
Yeah, little Mowgli.
Little androgynous
and
Mowgli.
Snoopy's Bequer blue.
Yeah.
Oh.
What about the mothering that's occurring for you energetically related to your projects and your creative expression?
I like this. I like that you're asking me questions. This is brilliant. Honestly, I'm passionate about the podcast. I'm passionate about creating content. I'm passionate about storytelling. And I want to consistently keep showing up. And the way that this podcast is impacting individuals that I get messages on a daily basis, emails, long, written, beautifully heart-pulling emails of people's lives that have drastically changed and that they've received a permission slip that they have not been able to receive from any media or from their peers up until this point of listening to DeJa Blue, and just realizing that, that my name is in the title, Blue, but it's not my name. My name is Charlotte. What I represent is beauty, love, and unity, which is blue. And so it's an archetype of breathing that through, that beauty, love, and unity is possible within your experience as well. And so I'm an ambassador of blue. And I have a vision of creating a book one day called The Book of Blue. How to access beauty, love, and unity within your human experience. Something.
It's one day and not now.
Because I stall on it.
Oh, is that the only reason?
I'm like, do I have what it takes to write a book right now? And will it be interesting? And will people actually be interested in what I've got to say?
Well, I would say that your audience would give you a resounding fuck yes to that. So if the only thing blocking you from doing it is the fear that it won't be interesting, then that's bullshit, and that can be eradicated right now, right here.
Yeah, it could be in real time, just like my hiccups did. Have you noticed they've gone?
They're far away.
Well, while you were sharing, I decided to hold my breath for almost 30 seconds.
Well done.
Or if not, even more. I was curious, though, if like some sort of vein would start protruding out of my forehead
You just
and
pass
lose
out
track
like the
of
chick.
what you were saying. And I was like...
Oh, God, I squeezed her too tight.
Yeah, oh, no. I was not planning on telling the chick story, but I definitely felt like it was relevant.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah, please don't put me into the category of some sort of animal harmer.
It explains your veganism. You're just making up for your karmic curriculum.
Yeah, actually, I think so.
All right,
yeah.
is it time to claim that?
Content creation.
Is it time to claim the book?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So there's a big question mark in that.
It feels like it. I want to get my energy behind anything. If I'm committed to anything, my energy has got to be 100% behind it. My energy is 100% behind it to being a timeline. In this present moment, claiming it, I want my energy to be behind it. It's not behind it just yet.
Okay. It's gestating.
It's gestation. It's
baking.
in a 9-month gestation period of it being in the mother's womb.
Beautiful.
The DNA is being laid down. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so really, and also right now I find myself in a relationship with somebody that is brilliant, not only mentally, but brilliant at his craft, brilliant at telling stories, brilliant at capturing in the highest quality, most pristine way. And I feel like I'm the sort of person, and I have done this many times, where I'll painting it's not finished and sell it. So I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, it's not mine. I don't really associate with my creations in the sense I believe that they come through me and I get the medicine from it. But then once it's complete, or not even complete, I'll sell it. Where the beautiful piece that Andre has is that he is meticulous in cultivating things that are polished and are presentable. And I believe that us collaborating together is that we can utilize the alchemy and the magnetic qualities of our relationships, translate them through storytelling, and then have all of the resources and have all of the skill set to be able to tell a really, really great story that can captivate an audience to support them in the name of self-empowerment, to empower the people through our unique archetypal experience. And usually I find that our audience is a byproduct of the archetype that we represent. So I look on my Instagram and I look at my insights and I'll see that my audience is predominantly from the ages of 25 to 35 women. And so, you know, that's of course, that's my age and I'm a woman. So it's like what I speak about, what archetype I embody, I represent. And I think that when Andre and I collide together, he represents a certain archetype, I represent a certain archetype, and then we can give a voice for individuals that may not have a platform or even have been able to put words to what they're feeling. They've felt their whole life, and yet they've been born in a society that does not support their fullest expression. Ultimately, that would be, that's something that I really want to go all in on. I've committed to this relationship. I've committed to my love in this relationship, and I'm committed to storytelling, which is also what he's committed to. So I'd love to see that weave more in a way that feels like a full yes from both parties. So I'm publicly saying it. I'm speaking it out here on the podcast.
Beautiful.
Thanks for asking me this question.
Sure thing.
Actually, it's so funny. While we were speaking, I had a vision that I wanted to do the next podcast where somebody asked me questions.
Oh.
Because I've done many podcasts recently where it's been a highlighting again.
Yeah.
And I haven't actually done a solo podcast, but I was thinking actually just role reversing it and having somebody have an opportunity to host.
Yeah.
But this was just organically happened.
Well, you called it in, didn't you?
Yeah, your third iPhone is never switched off.
Never, darling.
Receiving those codes. Anyway, I think that because I don't have the usual equipment, I can't see how long this podcast is, but it has a feeling that it's way over an hour.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. Time's quantum when we're together.
It is true. It is true. I do have a few announcements to make.
Go for it.
And then I'd like to, in fact, actually, let's start with you sharing your social platforms, how to follow you, how to plug in. We've talked about this on multiple podcasts in the past, but this is just for anybody that's just tuning in specifically to this one. How do I find you, Azrya? You're brilliant.
Aw. On Instagram, I'm at Iazrya. I like iPhone, and then Azrya. And then my website currently, the one that is most representative of the work that I do, is the-ffy for fullfuckyes.com. So theffy.com.
Amazing. And if you have a little string of curiosity to want to look into the magic that this woman is creating, and really, truly, it is magic. One of the most profound human beings I know. Hence why she's my best friend. Then definitely check out that website and follow her on Instagram and continue to weave the fam. Alrighty, so there's something also that I wanted to share with all of you. If you resonate with me and you resonate with Azrya, you will certainly resonate with this woman. Her name is Alana Mehta. We have almost had her on the podcast, but we had a technical difficulty, so we haven't been able to have her fully on the podcast yet. However, I have taken her courses before, and she has blasted the roof off my reality of how to wild. We did an intro to how to goddess, and that was an introduction for me to weave and cultivate a relationship with all of the goddesses. And now she has this course called How to Wild, and it is a 5-week digital course to reawaken the wild woman's body's intelligence, feminine wisdom, and connect to nature. So that is starting, I believe, in October. She has given me a discount code, so if you want to be a part of that, you can go to www.alanemeta.com/HTW, which stands for How to Wild. If you want to use a discount code, you can utilize the code Bluebirds, all one word, to get a discount on that course. I cannot recommend it enough. This woman is magic in what she does. She is a master at activating the codes of rewilding and activating the feminine within you and bringing it into balance with the masculine. Powerful woman. I also want to give a shout out. I don't usually do this on my podcast, but I felt like I really want to continue to share my audience with people that I really believe in and that are doing beautiful things in the world. And there is a woman named Ama. She is based in Bali, and she has shown up as my fairy godmother, and she owns a company called Aya Sacred Wear. She is Aya_Sacred Wear on Instagram, and her brand especially focused on fabrics that are hand spun and hand woven, supporting ancient skills and traditional crafts. They strive to go deeper to the source of all materials, from the seed planted to the human weaving it. Their vision is to be able to connect with each being involved in the making of from the very source, being able to source the most ethical, fair trade, eco, and conscious materials. I believe that our consciousness is woven into every thread and stitch, and so this is an opportunity for us to take ownership of the clothes that we are wearing. We've got... Alrighty, so that with being said, sending so much love to all of you bluebirds for listening, for tuning in with us, and the dogs and everything in between, all of the imperfections woven into the perfections.
The beautiful chaos of this dimension,
yes,
coming full circle.
The dogs are making me sweat a little bit more under my armpits. So with that, on that note, I think we'll close it out. Thank you, Azrya, for being here on DeJa Blu. So grateful to have you and to continue to weave your wisdom into this podcast. And I look forward to having you again on the podcast as a reoccurring guest. Thank you, Lily, for growling in the background, and to Andre for setting up all of the equipment, and to all of you bluebirds for tuning in. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are so loved, you are so appreciated, you are so heard and held, and I love you from my heart to yours. Blessings.
Bless.